The stars burned silently above Coruscant when the sky tore open, not with sound or ceremony, but with a fracture in reality itself, a wound between dimensions that bled crimson light across the Senate district's endless towers. The tear lasted 3 seconds, long enough for sensors across 20 districts to scream warnings, long enough for a Jedi master in the temple spire to feel something impossible brush against the Force, long enough for a figure wreathed in tattered black and red to fall through the breach before it sealed behind him with a thunderclap that shattered windows for half a kilometer. He struck the platform of a landing pad with enough force to crater Dura steel. The impact sent a shockwave rippling outward, scattering speeders and toppling a cargo droid. Alarms shrieked, emergency protocols activated across the sector, and in the center of the destruction, surrounded by twisted metal and sparking power conduits, a man rose to his feet. His cape, once a symbol of hope, now hung in burned tatters. The emblem on his chest, that stylized S, was scorched and cracked. His eyes opened, and they glowed with heat that had nothing to do with the setting sun. Kal-El of Krypton stood on a world he did not know and felt nothing but rage. The betrayal was still fresh, the memory of his world burning, not from invasion or catastrophe, but from its own people turning against him. They had called him a tyrant. They had united to stop him. Batman's kryptonite weapons, Wonder Woman's treachery, the Green Lantern Corps, descending with rings that could wound even him. He had tried to save them, tried to create order from chaos, and they had thrown it back in his face. The dimensional breach had been his prison breaking, a last desperate attempt by those who claimed to be heroes to banish him forever. They had succeeded, but not in the way they intended. This wasn't the Phantom Zone. This was somewhere else entirely, somewhere real, and he could feel the sun overhead, different but close enough in spectrum to feed his cells. Power flooded through him, strength returning after the long fight, his wounds closing, his heat vision rebuilding its charge behind eyes that had seen too much. A patrol speeder approached, lights flashing. 2 Republic officers in dark blue uniforms, hands reaching for blasters. The standard response to property damage and unknown threats. They activated their external speakers. "You there, remain where you are. Identify yourself immediately." The voice echoed across the platform. Pedestrians were already fleeing. Smart. The officers descended, keeping their vehicle between themselves and the crater. Superman tilted his head, focusing through walls and metal with vision that could see through planets. He catalogued their weapons. Primitive energy projectors, nowhere near lethal to him. Their vehicle's power source, some kind of compact reactor. Interesting, but irrelevant. The city beyond, massive beyond human comprehension, stretching to horizons he could barely perceive even with enhanced sight. And the people, billions of them, their hearts beating out a symphony of life that pulsed through his awareness like a drum. The officers emerged from their speeder, weapons drawn. "Final warning, hands where we can see them." Superman raised his hands slowly, not in surrender, but in dark amusement. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice carrying easily despite the wind at this altitude. "What planet is this?" The officers exchanged glances. "You're on Coruscant, capital of the Galactic Republic. Now identify yourself and prepare to be detained for questioning regarding destruction of private property and—" The rest of the sentence died as Superman moved. One instant he stood in the crater. The next he was beside them, having crossed 15 meters faster than they could track. Both officers stumbled backward, weapons swinging toward him in panic. "Don't!" Superman said, and the single word carried enough weight to freeze them both. He looked past them at the speeder, at the city beyond. Galactic Republic. Interesting. He floated upward, boots leaving the platform. The officer's eyes widened. "What are you?" Superman didn't answer. He rose into the sky, accelerating, leaving sonic booms in his wake as he climbed through Coruscant's atmosphere. Below, the city sprawled in every direction, a monument to civilization and order, exactly the kind of world he had tried to build, the kind they had torn down. His jaw tightened. This time would be different. This time he would not make the mistake of asking permission, of waiting for people to accept what needed to be done. If this galaxy needed saving, he would save it. If they resisted, he would show them the cost of chaos. In the Jedi Temple, Master Yoda's ears folded downward. The ancient Jedi sat in meditation, surrounded by 500 years of accumulated wisdom, and felt the Force recoil from something it could not touch. Not emptiness, like the Sith, Not absence like the droids, but something that existed entirely outside the cosmic energy that bound all living things. A being of pure physical law, operating on principles the Force could not influence. He opened his eyes and reached for his comlink. Master Windu, disturbed, the Force has become. Something new has arrived, something dangerous. Across the city, in the Senate building's highest spire, Chancellor Palpatine paused mid-sentence during a security briefing. His yellow eyes, hidden behind the mask of a concerned politician, tracked something through the Force that should not exist. A void, a blank space in the living currents of the galaxy, but more than blank. This had presence, power, the kind that could upset carefully laid plans. Darth Sidious smiled behind his public face. Perhaps this anomaly could be useful. Perhaps it could accelerate the timeline he had so carefully constructed. The Clone Wars were proceeding according to plan, but a new variable might provide opportunities or challenges. Either way, it would be interesting. Superman hovered at the edge of space, looking down at the city world below. His super hearing picked up the chaos his arrival had caused. News reports flooding the holonet, military scrambles across a dozen districts, and something else, a pulsing energy from a massive pyramidal structure that stood apart from the surrounding buildings. Old, powerful in a way he couldn't quite define. He focused, letting his senses drift across the city, mapping population centers, identifying military installations, cataloging the technological level of this civilization. Advanced, but not beyond comprehension. Faster than light travel, yes. He had seen the ships moving between the towers, energy weapons, artificial gravity, but nothing that suggested they could threaten him. A flight of starfighters approached from the east, 12 craft in tight formation, Republic military markings on their hulls. He watched them come, making no move to hide or flee. The lead pilot's voice crackled across open frequencies. "Unknown contact, this is Gold Squadron. You are in restricted airspace. Identify yourself immediately and prepare to be escorted to the nearest security station." Superman transmitted back, his voice calm. "I am Kal-El. I'm not here to fight, but I won't be detained." The fighters began to spread out, forming a perimeter around him. "Sir, that's not your decision. Please comply, or we will be forced to—" Superman moved, faster than their sensors could track. He closed the distance to the lead fighter and simply placed his hand on its hull. The craft shuddered. Alarms screamed in the cockpit as systems registered an impossible impact, but no damage. The pilot's heart rate spiked with fear Superman could hear clearly. "Your weapons won't hurt me," Superman said, his voice transmitted directly through the fighter's hull into the cockpit. "But I don't want to hurt you either. Return to your base. Tell your commanders I'm here to observe, nothing more." He released the fighter and drifted backward. The squadron leader's voice was shaken but professional. "Gold leader to command. Contact is— I don't know what it is. It's faster than anything in our database. It just casually caught my fighter mid-flight, requesting instructions. A pause, then new orders. Gold Squadron, maintain distance, do not engage, relay all sensor data to Jedi Temple and continue observation protocol. The fighters pulled back, but didn't leave. Superman ignored them, returning his attention to the city below, specifically to that temple, the source of the strange energy he couldn't quite understand. Master Windu stood in the council chamber, holographic displays showing the unknown contact's position and capabilities. Around the circular room, Jedi Masters from across the galaxy appeared in blue light, their physical bodies too distant to attend in person. "Unprecedented," Master Ki-Adi-Mundi said, his tall cranium tilted as he studied the data. "A being that can fly unaided, survive in vacuum, and move at speeds exceeding our fastest interceptors. The Force tells us nothing about him. It's as if he exists outside the natural order." Obi-Wan Kenobi stepped forward, stroking his beard thoughtfully. "Perhaps he's using technology we can't detect, some kind of personal shield generator and propulsion system." Yoda shook his head. "No, feel him. You cannot touch him. The Force does not. Not technology, something else, something that does not belong to this galaxy." Anakin Skywalker, standing beside his former master, felt frustration building. "Then we go meet him, find out what he wants. Standing here, speculating won't help. High above, Superman had made his decision. He descended toward the temple, moving slowly enough to avoid creating another sonic boom. The fighters followed at a distance. He landed in the temple's main courtyard, his boots touching ancient stone worn smooth by millennia of Jedi footsteps. Around him, robed figures backed away. Younglings were quickly ushered inside by protective instructors. Temple guards in ceremonial armor moved into defensive positions, energy pikes humming to life. He stood in the center, waiting, hands at his sides. Non-threatening for now. The main doors opened. 4 figures emerged. Master Yoda, leaning on his Geimer stick, his ancient eyes sharp. Mace Windu, his dark robes barely concealing the tension in his stance. Obi-Wan, diplomatic and cautious. And Anakin, young, powerful, his hand resting on his lightsaber hilt. Superman recognized authority when he saw it. These were leaders, decision-makers, the ones he needed to speak with. "I am Kal-El," he said, his voice carrying across the courtyard without needing to shout. "I'm not from this galaxy. I didn't choose to come here, but now that I'm here, I want to understand what kind of place this is." Mace Windu stepped forward. "I am Master Windu of the Jedi Council. You've caused significant alarm with your arrival. The destruction at the landing platform, the disruption of military patrols. These are not the actions of someone seeking peaceful understanding." Superman's eyes narrowed slightly. "I fell from the sky through a dimensional tear. The landing wasn't gentle, and your military approached me with weapons. I defended myself without harming anyone. That's more restraint than this situation required." Obi-Wan raised his hands in a calming gesture. "Perhaps we can start again. You say you're not from this galaxy. Can you explain how you came to be here?" Superman considered his answer. These people didn't need to know about his world, about his failures, about what he had become in trying to force peace on those who rejected it. There was a battle. My enemies opened a portal to banish me. I fell through. The portal closed. Now I'm here. It was true, technically, just not complete. Yoda stepped forward. His short stature contrasted against Superman's tall frame. But the ancient Jedi's presence was immense. "Sense your intentions, we cannot. Blank to the Force you are. Dangerous, that makes you. Unpredictable." Superman looked down at the small green being. "The Force. I've been hearing that term in your communications. Some kind of energy field?" Windu nodded. "The Force binds all living things. It flows through the galaxy, connecting everything. We Jedi serve the Force. We use it to maintain peace and justice." Superman's expression hardened. "Peace and justice through what? I see warships in your sky, military installations across this city. Your Republic is fighting a war." Anakin's hand tightened on his weapon. "We're defending against the Separatists. They're trying to tear the Republic apart." Superman turned his gaze to the young Jedi. "And what methods are you using? I've seen the sensors tracking me, the weapons targeting me, the fear in your soldiers' hearts. How many have died in this war of yours?" The question hung in the air, uncomfortable, accurate. Master Windu's jaw tightened. "War is never desirable, but sometimes it's necessary to protect the innocent." Superman laughed, a bitter sound. "I've heard that before. Used that justification myself. It never ends the way you think it will." He looked past them, at the temple, at the city beyond. "You want to know why I'm here? I'll tell you. I was trying to save my world, trying to stop the chaos and violence by imposing order, and the people I was trying to save betrayed me for it. If you wish to see more legends cross into this galaxy, please subscribe. The next story may be closer than you think." Superman's cape stirred in the wind that swept through the courtyard. "They called me a tyrant, said I had gone too far, so they banished me, threw me into the unknown, rather than accept the peace I offered." His eyes glowed faintly, heat building behind them. "I'm done asking permission, done waiting for approval. If this galaxy needs someone strong enough to enforce real peace, then I'll do it, with or without your cooperation." The Jedi Council members exchanged glances. This was worse than they feared. Not just a powerful unknown, but one with a philosophy that directly opposed everything the Jedi stood for. Yoda's voice was gentle but firm. "Help you understand? We can. Show you another way, but force your will upon the galaxy. we cannot allow. Free will, sacred it is, even when choices lead to suffering. Superman shook his head. Freedom without guidance leads to chaos. I learned that lesson the hard way. This time will be different. He rose into the air, hovering just above the courtyard's stones. I'm going to learn about this galaxy, understand its conflicts, and then I'm going to solve them. You can either help me or stay out of my way. Before the Jedi could respond, he accelerated upward, creating a blast of wind that sent robes billowing and younglings stumbling. In seconds he was gone, vanishing into Coruscant's sky lanes faster than tracking systems could follow. The temple courtyard fell silent. Master Windu turned to Yoda. We have a problem. Across the galaxy, on the separatist capital of Raxus, Count Dooku felt the disturbance through his connection to the dark side, a ripple of something that didn't belong. His master, Darth Sidious, had already contacted him with cryptic warnings about a new player entering the board, someone powerful enough to disrupt carefully laid plans. Dooku stroked his beard thoughtfully. Perhaps this anomaly could be turned to the separatist cause, a being capable of standing against the Jedi, unbound by the Force. It would require careful manipulation, but the potential was significant. Superman flew across Coruscant at speeds that turned the city into a blur below him. His superhearing catalogued thousands of conversations, news reports, military chatter. He was learning. The Galactic Republic, 25,000 years old, thousands of member worlds, a senate that governed through democracy and debate, and a war that had been raging for 3 years. The Separatist Alliance, worlds that wanted to leave the Republic, led by former Jedi turned Sith, though the reports were unclear on what that meant. He slowed as he approached the industrial districts, massive factories stretching for kilometers, clone production facilities, according to the signs. He descended, hovering above one such complex, and used his X-ray vision to peer through the walls. What he saw made his blood run cold. Thousands of beings, identical, growing in tanks, artificial wombs, producing soldiers by the battalion, children forced to age rapidly, given weapons and armor, and sent to die in a war they never chose. His hands clenched into fists. On his world, he had stopped such practices, ended human cloning, destroyed the facilities that treated life as a commodity. And here, the supposed champions of peace and justice used the same methods, created slaves to fight their wars. The Jedi knew, must have known, and they allowed it, accepted it as necessary. His heat vision activated involuntarily, red beams lancing down and cutting through the factory's power grid. Alarms screamed, backup systems engaged, but the cloning tank's power supply had been severed. Inside, thousands of embryos would need to be evacuated or they would die. Superman descended into the chaos, moving through hallways with purpose. Medical personnel scattered before him, security droids activated, but their blasters found only empty air. As he moved faster than their targeting systems, he reached the main control room and simply tore the door from its frame. The technicians inside froze, hands raised. "Evacuate the tanks," Superman commanded. "Transfer the embryos to stable medical facilities, all of them." A Kaminoan supervisor, tall and graceful, stepped forward. "Sir, those are Republic property, contracted production for—" Superman's eyes flared with heat. "They're children, not property, not soldiers, children. You have 10 minutes to begin evacuation protocols, or I start removing them myself." He crossed his arms. "And I'm not gentle with equipment." The Kaminoan's expression shifted from indignation to calculation to fear. She nodded quickly. "Begin emergency evacuation procedures. All personnel to designated stations." The facility erupted into organized chaos. Superman stood in the control room, watching through the windows as tanks were disconnected and moved to transport pods. On Coruscant, the Jedi Council received reports of the industrial district incident within minutes. Master Windu's face was grim as he read the details. "He's attacked a cloning facility, destroyed their power grid, and is forcing the evacuation of thousands of clone embryos." Anakin frowned. "Why would he do that?" Obi-Wan's expression was thoughtful. "He said he was trying to save his world by imposing order. Perhaps he has strong views on what constitutes ethical treatment of life." Yoda closed his eyes. "See his point, you do not. But see his pain, I can. Someone who tried to help, who failed, who learned the wrong lessons from failure." He looked up at the other council members. More dangerous than Sith. He may be. Sith want power. This one wants to save people, whether they wish saving or not. The ancient Jedi's words carried weight born of centuries. Stop him. We must. But carefully. Direct confrontation. Disastrous it would be. Superman finished his work at the cloning facility and returned to Coruscant's upper atmosphere. He needed more information. Needed to understand the full scope of this war and the powers behind it. His hearing picked up a transmission. Encrypted military channel. Republic forces under attack on Ryloth. Separatist droid armies overwhelming defensive positions, civilian casualties mounting. He made a decision. If he was going to understand this conflict, he needed to see it firsthand. The journey to Ryloth took seconds at full speed. Superman tore through hyperspace using methods that would have baffled the Republic's finest scientists. He simply flew, faster than light, faster than physics should allow, but his Kryptonian physiology operated on principles that transcended conventional science. He emerged in Ryloth's orbit and immediately assessed the situation. Republic cruisers exchanging fire with separatist frigates, droid landing craft descending toward population centers, and on the surface, clone troopers fighting against impossible odds. He descended like a meteor, contrails of superheated air marking his passage through the atmosphere. Below, a clone battalion was pinned down by a droid army 3 times their number. Artillery rained down from separatist positions. Casualties were mounting. The clone commander, his armor marked with distinctive blue stripes, coordinated a fighting retreat. Fall back to secondary positions. We can't hold here. His troops moved with practiced efficiency, covering each other, carrying wounded, dying with weapons in hand. Superman landed between the 2 armies. The impact cratered the ground and sent both sides reeling backward. Droids processed the new data point and immediately retargeted. Hundreds of weapons swiveled toward him. Clone troopers, trained since birth to adapt to changing battlefield conditions, held fire and waited for their commander's orders. Superman stood in the no-man's land, cape billowing, and addressed both sides through enhanced vocal projection. This battle is over. Stand down. The droids, programmed for conquest, opened fire. Thousands of blaster bolts converged on Superman's position. He stood unmoving. The energy weapons struck his chest, his arms, his face. Every bolt dissipated harmlessly against invulnerable skin. When the barrage finally ceased, smoke cleared to reveal him completely unharmed. He hadn't even blinked. The droid army processed this new information and came to a collective conclusion. Escalate firepower. Artillery pieces swiveled toward him. Tank-sized walkers advanced, heavy cannons charging. Superman sighed. He had hoped for surrender, for logic to prevail, but machines followed their programming. He moved, faster than sensors could track. One instant he stood in the center of the battlefield. The next, he was beside the nearest artillery piece. He gripped it with both hands and simply lifted. The entire vehicle, 20 tons of armor and weaponry, rose into the air like a toy. He spun once and released it. The artillery piece flew across the battlefield and crashed into a droid formation, scattering metal bodies like bowling pins. The clone commander lowered his macro binoculars slowly. What in the force is that? His troops were equally stunned. Superman didn't pause. He moved through the droid army like a force of nature, every strike precise, every movement economical. He didn't destroy the droids with heat vision or freeze breath. Didn't use his full power. Instead, he dismantled them, pulling apart war machines with his bare hands, crushing weapons into scrap, creating chaos in the enemy formation without killing the clones caught in the crossfire. A super battle droid, larger and more heavily armed, stepped forward. Identify yourself, organic. You are interfering with separatist military operations. Superman grabbed its blaster cannon and crushed it into powder. I'm someone who's tired of watching wars fought by proxies. Your machines, they're slaves, and somewhere far away, the people who started this conflict are safe. While you all die. He tore the droid's head from its shoulders. It's going to stop. The battle lasted 3 more minutes. By the end, the droid army was reduced to scrap metal, scattered across a kilometer of battlefield. Not a single clone had died in that time. Superman had moved with such precision that he'd intercepted every artillery strike, disabled every weapon aimed at Republic positions. The clone Commander approached cautiously, helmet removed, revealing a face identical to thousands of others. "Sir, I'm Commander Cody. I don't know who you are, but you just saved my battalion. Thank you." Superman looked at the clone, at his face, so young despite the accelerated aging, at the armor marked with battle damage, at the weariness in his eyes. "How old are you?" Cody blinked. "I'm 10 years old, sir. Standard years." "Why?" Superman's jaw tightened. 10 years old, bred for war, trained since birth to fight and die for a republic that saw him as expendable. "And how many battles have you fought?" Cody's expression showed pride, mixed with exhaustion. "This is my 47th engagement, sir. Lost a lot of good men, but we always complete the mission." Superman turned away. The anger building inside him was dangerous. He could feel his heat vision threatening to activate again, could feel the urge to fly to Coruscant and demand answers from the Senate, from the Jedi Council, from everyone who allowed this atrocity to continue. But rage wouldn't solve this. He had learned that lesson too well. He took a deep breath and looked back at Cody. "Get your men to safety. Evacuate any civilians in the area. I'm going to make sure the Separatists don't come back." He rose into the sky, accelerating toward the Separatist fleet in orbit. The warships detected his approach and opened fire. Turbo laser batteries that could vaporize buildings tracked his small form and unleashed destruction. Superman flew through the barrage, his body absorbing energy that would have destroyed starfighters. He reached the nearest frigate and simply pushed through its hull. Metal parted like paper before his passage. Inside, he moved through corridors and compartments, dismantling weapons systems, destroying engines, but carefully avoiding areas where crew might be stationed. The frigate went dead in space, powerless and unable to continue the bombardment. Superman emerged from the other side and moved to the next ship, and the next. In 30 minutes, he had disabled the entire Separatist fleet without killing a single organic crew member. The ships drifted, helpless, their weapons offline and life support barely functioning. He opened a communication channel to all vessels. "This is Kal-El. I'm transmitting your coordinates to Republic forces. Surrender peacefully and you'll be treated according to military law. Resist and I'll dismantle every ship in this fleet piece by piece." On the command ship, a Neimoidian captain stared at the display showing the unknown assailant hovering outside the viewport. What is he?" His tactical officer shook his head. "Unknown, sir. Our weapons can't touch him. Our shields might as well not exist. He just flies through solid matter." The captain's decision was immediate. "Signal surrender to all ships. We cannot fight this." Across the fleet, white flags appeared on communication channels. Superman nodded and transmitted the coordinates to the Republic forces. Then he returned to the surface. Commander Cody and his battalion were establishing a perimeter when Superman landed. Medical teams were treating wounded. The battlefield was being secured. Cody approached with a data pad. "Sir, we're receiving reports from orbit. You single-handedly disabled an entire Separatist fleet. The Navy's moving in to secure the ships and take prisoners." Superman nodded. "Good. This planet is safe, for now." Cody hesitated. "Sir, may I ask what your connection is to the Republic? Are you some kind of special Jedi operative?" Superman shook his head. "I'm not a Jedi. I'm not with the Republic. I'm just someone who doesn't believe in letting people die when I can stop it." He looked at the young clone commander. "And I don't believe in using children as soldiers, no matter what they were bred for." Cody's expression hardened. "We're not children, sir. We're soldiers. The best soldiers in the galaxy. We were made for this." His words carried pride and conviction. The conditioning was complete. Superman's eyes softened with sadness. "You were made for this. You didn't choose it. There's a difference." Before Cody could respond, Superman's superhearing picked up a transmission. Urgent, encrypted, Jedi Council frequency. Master Windu's voice. "All available Jedi, converge on Coruscant immediately. The unknown has attacked Republic facilities and interfered with military operations on Ryloth. We need to contain this situation before it escalates further." Superman looked up at the sky. They were coming for him. Good. It was time for another conversation. He rose into the air without another word to Cody. The clone commander watched him go, conflicted emotions playing across his face. On one hand, this strange being had saved his entire battalion. On the other, he was clearly at odds with Republic command. Cody activated his comlink. "Sir, this is Commander Cody on Ryloth. The unknown has departed the surface, heading back toward Coruscant based on trajectory." The response was immediate. "Copy that, Commander. Continue securing the area. We'll handle the unknown. Superman arrived back at Coruscant to find the Jedi Temple preparing for confrontation. Ships circled the structure. Military speeders formed perimeters, and in the main courtyard, dozens of Jedi had assembled, knights and masters from across the Order, lightsabers not yet drawn, but hands resting on hilts, ready. He descended slowly, landing in the same spot he had occupied hours before. The assembled Jedi formed a loose circle around him. Master Windu stepped forward, flanked by Obi-Wan and Anakin. Kal-El, Windu said, his voice carrying authority. You've attacked Republic facilities, interfered with military operations, disabled an entire fleet. These actions cannot be tolerated. Superman met his gaze without flinching. I stopped a battle, saved lives on both sides, and I freed children from being grown in tanks to die in your war. If you have a problem with that, then your priorities need examination. Anakin stepped forward. Those clones are soldiers. They volunteered. They were created for war. Superman's voice carried across the courtyard. They had no choice. They were born into servitude, and you're using them as disposable troops. His eyes began to glow. I've seen this before. Justified it myself once. Told myself that the ends justified the means, that sacrificing some to save many was acceptable. I was wrong, and you're wrong. The Jedi surrounding him shifted uneasily. Several hands moved closer to lightsaber hilts. Master Yoda's voice cut through the tension. Understand your anger. We do. But solutions born of rage, helpful they are not. Changed. Our methods must be, but through cooperation, through wisdom, not through force. Superman shook his head. I tried cooperation on my world, tried working within the system, tried convincing people to make the right choices. It didn't work. They chose chaos over order, violence over peace, and millions died because I wasn't willing to act decisively. Mace Windu's hand moved to his lightsaber. And what are you proposing? That you impose your will on the entire galaxy? Force compliance through superior power? Superman's cape stirred in the wind that swept through the courtyard. If necessary, yes. This war is tearing your republic apart. The separatists want independence, but they're being manipulated. Your Senate is corrupt. Your Jedi Order is complicit in atrocities. The whole system needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. The courtyard exploded into motion. 24 lightsabers ignited, casting blue and green light across ancient stone. The Jedi didn't attack, but the message was clear. Stand down or face consequences. Superman remained still, evaluating. These warriors had abilities he didn't fully understand. The Force, whatever it was, allowed them to move with enhanced speed and reflexes. Their weapons, those energy blades, looked dangerous, but he was faster, stronger, more durable. If it came to a fight, he would win. The question was whether he wanted to. Anakin's blue blade hummed in his hand. You're powerful, maybe the most powerful being I've ever encountered, but you're not invincible, and you're not right. His voice carried conviction. The galaxy doesn't need another tyrant. We need people willing to fight for what's right, even when it's hard, even when the cost is high. Superman looked at the young Jedi, saw the idealism burning behind his eyes, the certainty. He had worn that same expression once, before the betrayals, before the losses. You remind me of someone, Superman said quietly, someone I used to be, before I learned that idealism isn't enough. He looked around at the assembled Jedi. You're all so certain, so sure that your way is right. But you're losing this war. Your republic is falling apart. Your methods aren't working. He crossed his arms. I can end this conflict in days, stop the fightings, save millions of lives. All you have to do is stand aside. Master Windu's expression hardened. At what cost? How many freedoms will you strip away? How many voices will you silence? Power without restraint leads to tyranny, always. Superman's eyes flared with heat. And restraint without action leads to suffering. I've seen both sides. I know where the line is. The tension reached a breaking point, both sides poised on the edge of violence. And then a new voice echoed across the courtyard. Perhaps both sides have valid concerns. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine emerged from the temple entrance, flanked by Senate guards. His elderly frame moved slowly, deliberately, projecting an image of wisdom and benevolence. The Jedi tensed at his presence. The Chancellor rarely visited the temple personally. His appearance now was significant. Palpatine approached the center of the courtyard, placing himself between Superman and the assembled Jedi. "Kal-El, is it? I am Chancellor Palpatine, leader of the Galactic Republic. I've been monitoring your activities since arrival." Superman studied the old man. His heartbeat was steady, controlled. His expression showed concern mixed with curiosity. But there was something else, something Superman's senses couldn't quite identify, a wrongness that didn't fit the external presentation. "Chancellor," Superman said neutrally, "I'm guessing you're here to negotiate my surrender." Palpatine smiled gently. "Nothing so crude. I'm here because I recognize a being who wants to help but doesn't know how to channel that desire constructively." The Chancellor turned to address both Superman and the Jedi. "We are in unprecedented times, a war that threatens to tear apart millennia of peace. Resources stretched thin, casualties mounting daily, and now a being of immense power appears, offering solutions but lacking understanding of our complex situation." He looked directly at Superman. "Your concerns about the clone army are noted. Your military intervention on Ryloth saved lives. These are not the actions of an enemy, but neither can we allow unilateral action without coordination." Master Windu's jaw tightened. The Chancellor was undermining the Jedi's authority, making them appear inflexible while positioning himself as reasonable. Classic political maneuvering. "Chancellor, with respect, this being has attacked Republic facilities and threatened our security. The Council must insist." Palpatine raised a hand gently. "Master Windu, your concerns are valid, but consider the opportunity before us. A being who can disable entire fleets without bloodshed, who prioritizes saving lives. These are qualities we desperately need." Superman watched the exchange with growing suspicion. The Chancellor's words were smooth, reasonable, but there was calculation behind them, a manipulation that reminded him too much of Lex Luthor, playing both sides, positioning himself as the moderate voice while advancing his own agenda. "What are you proposing?" Superman asked directly. Palpatine turned to him with a warm smile. "Simple cooperation. You want to help. We need help. Work with us. Let us show you the full scope of the conflict, the political complexities, the historical context. Make an informed decision rather than acting on incomplete information." It was a reasonable offer, too reasonable. Superman's instincts, honed by years of dealing with manipulators and schemers, screamed warnings, but refusing would only escalate the situation, would force a confrontation he wasn't sure he wanted. Not yet, not until he understood more about this galaxy and its power structures. "I'll consider it," he said finally. "But understand this, I won't be a pawn in your political games. I won't be weaponized for someone else's agenda, and if I see injustice, I'll act, regardless of whose authority I'm violating." Palpatine's smile never wavered. "Of course, I would expect nothing less from someone of your principles. Master Windu, please arrange quarters for our guest in the temple. Give him access to our archives. Let him learn about our order and our struggles." The Chancellor's tone made it clear this was not a suggestion. Windu nodded stiffly. "As you wish, Chancellor." Palpatine departed, his guards falling in step. The Jedi began to disperse, tension slowly bleeding from the courtyard, but several remained, watching Superman, wary. Obi-Wan stepped forward, lightsaber deactivated, and returned to his belt. "Come, I'll show you to the archives. You want to understand this galaxy. The temple library contains 25,000 years of recorded history." Superman nodded and followed the Jedi Master into the temple's interior. Behind them, Anakin remained in the courtyard, staring at the spot where the confrontation had nearly turned violent. Master Yoda approached, leaning on his stick. "Troubled you are, young Skywalker." Anakin turned to his elder. "He's so certain, so sure that he knows what's right. It reminds me of—" He trailed off. Yoda nodded slowly. "Yourself, You were about to say, yes, similar. You both are. Powerful, passionate, certain that strength alone can solve problems. The ancient Jedi's eyes held sadness. Different paths you have chosen so far, but choices ahead determine everything they will. Anakin watched as Superman disappeared into the temple with Obi-Wan. Do you think we can trust him? Yoda's ears drooped. Trust him? No. Stop him? Perhaps not. Guide him? That we must try, or lose everything. The words carried prophetic weight. Somewhere in the temple's depths, Darth Sidious smiled behind Palpatine's mask. This Kal-El could be the catalyst he needed, the final push to drive Anakin toward the dark side. Or perhaps, if properly manipulated, a weapon that could destroy the Jedi entirely. Either way, the plan was accelerating. Order 66 was still on schedule, but now there were new possibilities to explore. The Jedi? Archives were vast, beyond Superman's expectations. Halls of holographic records stretching into shadows. Ancient texts preserved in stasis fields. The accumulated wisdom of thousands of generations. Jedi archivist Jocasta Nu greeted them with cool professionalism. Master Kenobi, and our guest, welcome to the archives. I understand you wish to learn about the Republic and the current conflict. Superman nodded. Everything. I want to know how this war started, who the major players are, what both sides are fighting for. Jocasta Nu led them deeper into the archives. The Clone Wars began 3 years ago when several thousand systems left the Republic to form the Confederacy of Independent Systems, led by Count Dooku, a former Jedi Master. Their reasons were varied. Some felt the Republic had become too centralized, too corrupt. Others were manipulated by corporate interests seeking profit from war. She activated a holographic display showing a galaxy split between two factions. The Republic responded with military force. The Jedi were drawn in as generals, and the war has been devastating for both sides. Superman studied the display. The scale was massive. Thousands of worlds involved, trillions of beings affected. And the clones, when did they appear? Obi-Wan answered that question. 10 years ago, the Jedi Council ordered a clone army from the Kaminoans. At the time, it seemed suspicious. We didn't know who had actually placed the order or why, but when the war began, the Republic needed troops. The clone army was ready, so we used them. His voice carried hints of guilt. Superman turned to face the Jedi Master. You know it's wrong. I can hear it in your voice. The moral conflict. So why do you continue? Obi-Wan met his gaze steadily. Because the alternative is allowing the Separatists to win, to destroy the Republic, to plunge the galaxy into chaos. We make terrible choices during wartime, Kal-El, compromise our principles, all in service of the greater good. He paused. Sound familiar? The barb hit home. Superman's expression darkened. Yes, it sounds exactly like the justifications I used, the slope I slid down. He looked back at the holographic display, and at the end of that slope, I was everything I swore to fight against. Silence fell between them. Jocasta Nu tactfully withdrew, leaving the two to their conversation. Obi-Wan leaned against a reading terminal. What happened on your world? What turned you into someone who would be banished? Superman considered the question, considered whether to answer. Finally, he spoke. There was an attack. The Joker, a terrorist who found where I was vulnerable. He killed her, Lois, and our unborn child, used them to trigger a bomb that destroyed Metropolis. 12 million people died in an instant. His voice was flat, emotionless, the pain buried too deep to surface easily. I snapped, killed the Joker, right there, with my bare hands, and then I decided, no more evil. Going unpunished, no more criminals walking free to hurt innocent people. Obi-Wan's expression showed understanding and sorrow. You took control, Superman nodded. I established a new world order, ended wars, eliminated crime, used my abilities to monitor the entire planet, to stop threats before they could materialize. For a while it worked. People were safe. Violence dropped, but I had to compromise, had to make difficult choices, cross lines I never thought I would. He looked at his hands. And eventually people realized they'd traded freedom for security. The heroes I once called friends turned against me, declared me a tyrant. Obi-Wan was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. Were they wrong? The question hung in the air. Superman met his gaze. No, they were right. I became the thing I fought against. A dictator who believed his way was the only way, who couldn't see the harm I was causing because I was so focused on the good. He clenched his fists. But I wasn't wrong about the problems, the corruption, the violence, the injustice. I was just wrong about the solutions. The Jedi Master straightened. Then don't make the same mistakes here. This galaxy doesn't need another well-meaning tyrant. It needs— What? Superman interrupted. What does it need? A corrupt Senate? Jedi who compromise their principles? An army of slaves fighting a war they didn't choose? His eyes began to glow faintly. I've spent hours reading your history. Your republic has existed for 25,000 years. And in that time, how many wars have you fought? How many species have gone extinct? How many injustices have you allowed? Obi-Wan didn't flinch from the heat in Superman's gaze. More than I can count. We're not perfect. The Jedi have made mistakes. The Republic has failed many times. But we try to learn, to grow, to do better. He stepped closer. That's the difference between governance and tyranny. One acknowledges fallibility. The other claims absolute certainty. One allows for growth. The other enforces stagnation. His words carried the weight of centuries of Jedi philosophy. Superman turned back to the holographic displays. I need to see more, understand the full scope. If I'm going to decide how to proceed, I need complete information. Obi-Wan nodded. Then study, learn, and when you're ready, we'll talk again. He departed, leaving Superman alone in the archives. For hours, the Kryptonian read, absorbing history at superhuman speeds, learning about the Sith, about the Force, about the ancient wars between light and dark that had shaped this galaxy for millennia. And slowly, a picture emerged. This conflict wasn't simple, wasn't just good versus evil. Both sides had legitimate grievances. Both sides had committed atrocities. The Republic was corrupt and stagnant. The Separatists were being manipulated by corporate interests. The Jedi were compromised by their role as military leaders. The Sith were working from the shadows to destroy everything. And billions of innocent beings were caught in the middle, suffering and dying, while the powerful played their games. Superman's heat vision flared, scorching a nearby reading terminal before he could control it. Jocasta Nu hurried over. Sir, please be careful. These archives are irreplaceable, I know. Superman took a deep breath, reining in his anger. I apologize. I'll pay for any damages. The archivist studied him with new understanding. You're frustrated, angry at what you're learning. Superman nodded. Your galaxy is broken, and everyone just accepts it, keeps fighting the same wars, making the same mistakes. Jocasta Nu's expression softened. Yes, that's the tragic truth. We're bound by history, by tradition, by the weight of thousands of years of precedent. She gestured at the archives surrounding them. All this knowledge, all this wisdom, and we still repeat the same cycles. Light rises, dark falls, balance shifts, the Force flows on. She looked at Superman directly. But you're not bound by our history. You're not part of our cycles. Perhaps that's why you're here. The word struck something deep. Superman had been thinking of himself as an outsider, an exile forced into a galaxy he didn't understand. But perhaps there was purpose in his arrival. Perhaps this was a chance for redemption, a way to correct the mistakes he'd made on his own world by helping this one avoid the same fate. What if, he said slowly, there was a way to break the cycle, to solve the underlying problems instead of just treating symptoms? Jocasta Nu smiled sadly. Many have tried. All have failed. The Force seeks balance. When light grows too strong, darkness rises. When darkness threatens to consume everything, light emerges. She paused. But you exist outside the Force. Perhaps that changes the equation. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Superman could be the variable that finally disrupted the endless cycle. But at what cost? What would it take to truly change a galaxy? His contemplation was interrupted by alarms shrieking through the temple. Red lights flashed. Jedi rushed through the corridors. Obi-Wan burst back into the archives. Kal-El! We need you! Separatist fleet just jumped into orbit. They're bombarding the surface. Superman didn't hesitate. He followed Obi-Wan to the temple's upper landing platform, where gunships were loading Jedi strike teams. Master Windu was coordinating the defense. "All available fighters scramble. Get those shields up. Contact the Senate Guard." Superman interrupted by simply launching himself into the sky. No ship, no equipment, just raw power propelling him toward orbit faster than any fighter could follow. Behind him, Anakin grinned despite the crisis. "I really hate it when he does that." The young Jedi boarded his fighter and followed, though at a much slower pace. In orbit, Superman assessed the situation. 20 separatist cruisers, hundreds of droid fighters, and they were focusing fire on civilian sectors, maximizing casualties, spreading terror. His vision narrowed. This wasn't military action. This was terrorism, punishment for the Republic's refusal to negotiate. He accelerated toward the nearest cruiser, building speed, building momentum. The ship's point defense systems tracked him and opened fire, hundreds of laser batteries converging on one target. Superman flew through the barrage like it didn't exist. He struck the cruiser's bridge at near light speed. The impact was catastrophic. The entire forward section of the kilometer-long ship crumpled like tinfoil. But Superman had controlled his entry, had calculated the angle and force to disable without destroying. The crew quarters were intact. Life support still functioned, but the ship was dead in space, unable to continue the bombardment. He emerged from the wreckage and moved to the next target, and the next. In the space of 2 minutes, he had disabled half the fleet. The remaining ships began to scatter, attempting to jump to hyperspace. Superman wouldn't allow it. He flew to each ship in turn, tearing through their hyperdrives before they could activate, trapping them in orbit, forcing them to either surrender or continue a fight they couldn't win. A comm signal reached him. General Grievous, the separatist military commander, a cyborg with a reputation for ruthlessness. "Unknown entity, you are interfering with separatist military operations. Stand down immediately or face..." Superman transmitted back, his voice carrying across all frequencies. "Or face what? Your fleets are crippled, your droid armies are scrap, your leaders are hiding, while they send machines and conscripts to die." His eyes glowed with building heat. "I'm done with this war. Both sides. Tell Count Dooku that if he wants to continue fighting, he'll have to face me personally. No more proxy battles, no more civilian casualties. Him and me, that's the only conflict I'll allow from this point forward." The transmission ended. Across the battlefield, both Republic and Separatist forces received the message. On Coruscant, the Jedi Council heard it with a mixture of shock and concern. In the Senate, Palpatine smiled his benevolent smile, while Darth Sidious calculated behind that mask. And on Raxus, Count Dooku set down his teacup slowly. "Interesting," he murmured. "Most interesting indeed." Superman returned to Coruscant's surface as Republic forces moved to secure the disabled separatist ships. He landed in the Senate Plaza, where crowds had gathered to witness the orbital battle. Beings from 1,000 species, human and near-human, alien and exotic, all staring up at him with mixed expressions: fear, awe, hope, terror. He addressed them without preamble. "I am Kal-El. I'm not from this galaxy, but I'm here now, and I won't stand by while innocents suffer." His voice carried across the plaza, amplified by super breath and enhanced vocal projection. "Your leaders, both Republic and Separatist, have failed you. They've chosen war over negotiation, profit over principles, power over peace. That ends now. I'm issuing an ultimatum to both factions. Stop the fighting, begin real negotiations, address the underlying issues, or I will stop it for you." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some cheered, others looked uncertain. A few shouted objections. Superman didn't wait for consensus. He rose back into the sky. In the Jedi Temple, an emergency council session was convened. All masters present, either physically or via hologram. Holo communicators lit up the circular chamber with blue light. Masters from across the galaxy, some still coordinating evacuations from war zones, others already working on peace negotiations. The debate was fierce. Master Ki-Adi-Mundi spoke carefully, his tall cranium tilted in thought. "We cannot allow one being, no matter how powerful, to dictate policy for the entire galaxy. It sets a dangerous precedent. Today he stops a battle. Tomorrow he might decide who governs." Plo Koon's hologram flickered. The Kel-Dor Master's breathing mask gave his voice a mechanical edge. "But he makes valid points. The war has become endless. Casualties mount daily. We've lost perspective. become so focused on winning that we've forgotten why we fight. His gesture encompassed the council. How many compromises have we made? How many principles abandoned in the name of victory? Perhaps an outside perspective is exactly what we need. Master Luminara Unduli, her Mirialan features composed but troubled, added her voice. I've fought alongside clones for 3 years. I've watched younglings, barely older than Padawans, die in battles they never chose. Each time, I tell myself, it's necessary, that their sacrifice serves the greater good. Her voice dropped. I'm no longer certain I believe that. The admission hung in the chamber, heavy, uncomfortable. Other masters shifted, but none immediately contradicted her. Shakti, who had overseen clone training on Camino, spoke with visible pain. I've watched them grow, watch them develop personalities, form friendships, express hopes and dreams beyond their programming. She looked at her hands. I've also watched them shipped to battlefields by the thousands, told myself they were fulfilling their purpose, that being created for war made it acceptable. Her head-tails twitched. Kal-El forced me to examine that rationalization. It doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Mace Windu listened to the arguments, his strong features showing the weight of leadership. As head of the council, every death weighed on him, every compromise haunted him. We're debating philosophy while ignoring the immediate threat. Superman has demonstrated he can act unilaterally, can overpower our combined forces, can disrupt the careful balance we've maintained. He stood, hands clasped behind his back. The question isn't whether he's right about the war's problems. The question is whether we can afford to let him solve them his way. Kit Fisto's hologram smiled, though without real humor. Can we afford not to, Master Windu? With respect, our way has led to 3 years of slaughter, billions dead, economies destroyed, the Sith manipulating us from the shadows while we march our armies across the galaxy. The Nautolan's head-tails swayed. Maybe we need someone who doesn't respect our careful balance, someone willing to overturn the game board. The debate continued for hours, arguments for and against, concerns about precedent, questions about trust. Finally, Yoda listened to the arguments, felt the currents of the Force swirling with unprecedented turbulence. The ancient master had seen many conflicts in his long life, watched the Republic rise and fall and rise again, seen Jedi at their best and worst, and now he felt something shifting, something fundamental. A crossroads we have reached, he said finally, his voice cutting through the debate. All attention turned to him. Help Kal-El toward light we might, or push him toward dark, but ignore him, that we cannot do. Too powerful he is, too committed to action. The ancient master's gaze swept the council chamber, meeting each set of eyes. Work with him, we must. Guide him before he becomes the very thing he fears. Yoda's ears drooped slightly. Or worse, before we do, compromise too much we have, accept too much. Time it is to examine our own shadows. The council chamber fell silent. No one wanted to acknowledge the truth in Yoda's words, that in fighting monsters they had risked becoming monsters, that every justification for using the clone army, for accepting emergency powers, for becoming generals instead of peacekeepers, was a step down a path they had sworn to avoid. Superman's arrival and his blunt assessment had held up a mirror. The reflection was uncomfortable. Across the galaxy, in the heart of separatist space, Count Dooku meditated on the challenge Superman had issued. His elegant chambers on Sereno, his homeworld, reflected the Count's refined tastes, art from 100 cultures, books bound in leather, older than most species, and in the center a meditation chamber where he communed with the dark side. The Force whispered warnings, showed him potential futures. In most of them, direct confrontation with Superman ended in death. But Dooku had not survived decades of Sith training through direct confrontation alone. Politics had always been his true weapon. Lightsabers were merely tools for when diplomacy failed. And Superman, for all his power, was new to this galaxy, naive about its complexities, vulnerable to manipulation of the right kind. The Count smiled, his aristocratic features thoughtful. Perhaps the solution was to expose Superman to the Republic's corruption firsthand, to show him the hypocrisy of the Jedi, to turn his righteous anger against the very people trying to guide him. He composed a message, encrypted through channels even, the Jedi couldn't intercept, addressed to Superman directly. Kal-El, you challenged me to personal combat. I accept, but not in the way you expect. Come to Raxus. Come see what the Separatist Alliance truly fights for. See the systems the Republic oppressed, the beings they taxed into poverty to fund their centralized government. Then decide if your allies truly represent justice. The message was sent, a seed planted. Dooku was confident it would grow. Superman received the transmission while helping rebuild on Christophsis. He paused mid-flight, hovering above crystal towers that caught the light like frozen waterfalls. The message played through his communicator, Dooku's cultured voice, the challenge couched in invitation. It was obviously a trap, obviously manipulation, but it was also an opportunity to see the other side, to understand why thousands of systems had chosen to leave the Republic. He had judged the Separatists based on their use of droid armies, on their attacks, but he hadn't examined their grievances. He contacted Obi-Wan, who was on Coruscant coordinating with the Council. I received an invitation from Count Dooku. He wants me to visit Raxus, see the Separatist perspective. Obi-Wan's hologram flickered with alarm. Absolutely not. It's obviously a trap. Dooku is Sith. He'll try to turn you, manipulate you, or kill you. Superman considered this. All true, but I've been operating in an echo chamber, only hearing the Republic's side, only seeing their version of events. How can I make informed decisions if I don't understand both perspectives? The Jedi Master wanted to argue, wanted to forbid it, but he recognized that look in Superman's eyes, the determination. Then let me come with you, provide context, help you see through Dooku's manipulation. Superman nodded. Agreed. We leave in an hour. And Obi-Wan? The hologram waited. If this is a trap, stay behind me. I can take whatever they throw at us. You can't. The concern was genuine. The friendship that had developed between them, unexpected but real. They traveled to Raxus in a civilian transport, unarmed, unescorted, a gesture of good faith that made both Republic and Separatist intelligence services extremely nervous. The Separatist capital was not what Superman expected. Instead of military installations and droid factories, he saw cities that could have been on Coruscant. Beings going about their lives, markets, schools, art galleries. The only differences were the architecture and the lack of Republic symbolism. Everywhere he looked, he saw normal people, not monsters, not terrorists, just beings trying to live. Count Dooku met them in the Parliament building, surrounded by representatives from separatist systems. The Count was tall, elegant, his white hair and beard perfectly groomed. His eyes held intelligence and something else, darkness that Superman's senses couldn't quite define, but instinctively recognized as dangerous. Kal-El, Master Kenobi, welcome to Raxus. Thank you for accepting my invitation. The courtesy was perfect, the threat underneath unmistakable. Superman didn't waste time on pleasantries. You said you wanted to show me your perspective. I'm listening. Dooku gestured to the assembled representatives. Then hear it from those who live it. Not from me, from the beings the Republic failed. A Nemoidian stepped forward, his elaborate robes rustling. I am Senator Locke Durd. My homeworld of Cato Nemoidia was taxed at rates 3 times higher than core worlds. Our resources extracted, our people impoverished. When we petitioned the Senate for relief, we were ignored. A Geonosian delegate clicked and whistled, their words translated by a protocol droid. The Republic used our factories, exploited our labor, then abandoned us when corporations found cheaper production elsewhere. Our economy collapsed. The Senate did nothing. More delegates spoke, each with grievances that sounded legitimate. Systems ignored, beings exploited, corruption that went unpunished because it benefited the core worlds at the expense of the Rim. Obi-Wan listened with growing discomfort. He knew these complaints had merit, had heard similar grievances in the Senate for years. The Republic wasn't perfect, had never claimed to be, but it was supposed to be better than the alternatives. And your solution, the Jedi Master said carefully, was war, droid armies that kill indiscriminately? Dooku's smile was thin. Our solution was to leave. to form our own government. It was the Republic that responded with military force, that sent your clone army to bring us back by violence. The words hit hard because they were partially true. The Republic had fired the first shots on Geonosis, had chosen military action over continued negotiation. Superman looked at Obi-Wan. Is that accurate? The Jedi Master's jaw tightened. The situation was complex. The Separatists were building a droid army. We had intelligence suggesting they planned to attack. Dooku interrupted smoothly. Intelligence provided by whom? The Jedi. The same Jedi who serve the Republic, who benefit from the centralized power structure. Superman held up a hand. Both sides have valid points, and both sides have committed atrocities. He looked at Dooku directly. You're using droid armies, machines that don't hesitate, don't question orders, don't show mercy. You've bombed civilian targets, committed war crimes. He turned to Obi-Wan. And the Republic uses slave soldiers, children bred for war. You've become what you claim to fight against. His eyes began to glow faintly. You're both wrong, both corrupted by the very conflict you perpetuate. The Parliament chamber fell silent. Both sides wanted to argue, to justify their actions, to claim moral high ground. But Superman's assessment was too accurate, too devastating in its simplicity. Count Dooku recovered first. Then help us end it, not through domination, through genuine reform. The Republic is broken. The Separatist alliance is flawed. But between us, with someone like you ensuring accountability, perhaps we could build something better. It was masterful manipulation, appealing to Superman's desire to help while positioning Dooku as reasonable. Superman saw through it, saw the trap being laid, but he also saw the opportunity within it. Here's what's going to happen, he said, his voice carrying authority that filled the chamber. Both sides cease hostilities immediately. No more battles, no more attacks. You begin peace negotiations, real ones, with the goal of addressing the underlying problems, not just redistributing power. He looked at Dooku, then at Obi-Wan. And I'll ensure compliance. Anyone who breaks the peace, Republic or Separatist, answers to me. Dooku's smile didn't reach his eyes. And if we refuse? Superman's eyes flared with barely controlled heat. Then I dismantle both your governments and help the people build new ones. Ones that actually serve them instead of using them as pawns. The threat was clear, total, and backed by demonstrated capability to follow through. Dooku inclined his head. I will convey your terms to the Separatist Council, but understand, Kal-El, that peace is more complicated than simply demanding it. I know, Superman said quietly. I learned that lesson on my world, but so is war, and I'm done watching people die while politicians play games. He departed, Obi-Wan following. Behind them, the Separatist Parliament erupted into urgent discussion. Had Superman been deceived, or had he just changed everything? Only time would reveal which. Yoda listened to the arguments, felt the currents of the Force swirling with unprecedented turbulence. A crossroads we have reached, he said finally. Help Kal-El toward light we might, or push him toward dark, but ignore him. That we cannot do. Too powerful he is, too committed to action. The ancient master's gaze swept the council chamber. Work with him, we must. Guide him, before he becomes the very thing he fears. Across the galaxy, in the heart of Separatist space, Count Dooku meditated on the challenge Superman had issued. Dueling Superman personally would be suicidal. The being was clearly beyond conventional combat, but perhaps that wasn't the answer. Perhaps the solution was to expose him to the Republic's corruption, to show him the hypocrisy of the Jedi, to turn his righteous anger against the very people trying to guide him. Dooku smiled. Politics had always been his true weapon. Lightsabers were merely tools. He contacted his master via secure hologram. Darth Sidious materialized in flickering blue light. Lord Tyrannus, I've been expecting your call. Dooku inclined his head. Master, this Kal-El presents both opportunity and risk. How should we proceed? Sidious steepled his fingers. Let him rage against the corruption he sees. Feed his doubts about the Jedi. When the time comes for Order 60, his intervention could scatter the Jedi or delay their response. Either way, it serves our purpose. Dooku frowned slightly. And if he opposes us directly? Sidious's smile was cold. Then we use the one weapon he cannot resist. Kryptonite exists in many forms, across many dimensions. If he truly is from another universe, we need only find what weakens him. The Separatist Science Division will begin research immediately, analyze his actions, determine his limits. Every being has a weakness, even gods. The transmission ended, leaving Dooku alone with his thoughts. Superman spent the night flying, not toward any destination, just moving, processing everything he'd learned, every conflict he'd witnessed, every injustice embedded in this galaxy's structure. The stars burned silently above him as he reached the edge of the system. Out here, away from the billions of lives pressing against his enhanced senses, he could think clearly, could evaluate his options. He had made an ultimatum. Now he needed to follow through. But how? His freeze breath crystallized moisture in space. His heat vision carved temporary patterns in passing asteroids, physical expressions of inner turmoil. On his world, he had tried to impose peace through strength. It had failed catastrophically. But here, he had a chance to try again, to learn from mistakes, to find a better balance between action and restraint. The question was whether such balance existed, whether power could ever be used benevolently, whether control and freedom could coexist. Dawn came to Coruscant. Superman returned to the temple where a delegation awaited him. Masters Yoda and Windu, Anakin and Obi-Wan, and surprisingly Chancellor Palpatine, with several senators. The old Chancellor stepped forward. Kal-El, your actions yesterday saved millions of lives. The Senate wishes to formally thank you. Superman's eyes narrowed. I don't want thanks. I want action, real change, not political theater. Palpatine's smile never wavered. Of course, which is why I've arranged for you to address the Senate directly. Let you present your perspective to the galaxy's leaders. Isn't that what you wanted? A platform to push for reform? It was a trap. Superman could sense it, could hear the quickening of heartbeats among several senators, could see the calculation behind Palpatine's gentle expression. But refusing would make him look unreasonable, would give ammunition to those who wanted to paint him as a threat. When? He asked simply. Tomorrow, prime session. Every senator will attend. Every HoloNet channel will broadcast it. Palpatine gestured toward the Senate building. You wanted to understand our galaxy. This is your opportunity to be understood in turn. Superman nodded slowly. Tomorrow, then. The delegation departed, leaving him alone with the Jedi. Anakin was the first to speak. You know it's a setup, right? Palpatine's a politician. He doesn't do anything without an angle. Superman looked at the young Jedi with new appreciation. You're more perceptive than I gave you credit for. Yes, I know. But sometimes you have to walk into traps if you want to spring them. Obi-Wan stroked his beard thoughtfully. What are you planning to say to the Senate? Superman smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. The truth about the clone army, about the corporate manipulation of the war, about every piece of corruption I've found in your archives. Master Windu's eyes widened. That could destabilize the entire Republic. In the middle of a war, Superman met his gaze. Good. Maybe destabilization is exactly what you need. Maybe burning down corrupt structures is the only way to build something better. The Jedi exchanged worried glances. Yoda stepped forward, his ancient eyes seeing deeper than most. Careful, young Kal-El. Burn down the old you might, but from ashes, darkness often rises, not always light. The words carried prophetic weight. Superman considered them. Then you'd better make sure light is what emerges, because with or without you, change is coming. I'm going to make certain of it. He departed, leaving the Jedi in troubled contemplation. That night, across the galaxy, beings prepared for the coming address. Separatist agents positioned themselves to exploit any missteps. Republic loyalists organized counter-messaging. The Jedi Council meditated on potential outcomes. And in the depths of the Senate building, Darth Sidious refined his plans. This Superman could be useful, could accelerate the timeline. could create the crisis needed to justify emergency powers. Order 66 was close, so close. Just a few more moves on the board. The Senate chamber was packed. 2,000 senators representing thousands of worlds. The circular hall designed to give every voice equal platform. Superman stood in the speaker's pod, raised above the assembled government. HoloNet cameras focused on him from every angle, broadcast to trillions across the galaxy. Palpatine sat in the Supreme Chancellor's chair, expression benevolent. The Senate recognizes Kal-El, visitor from beyond our galaxy. Please, share your observations. Superman looked out at the assembled leaders, at their expensive robes, their jeweled ornaments, their comfortable positions built on the backs of those who suffered. He didn't use notes, didn't prepare a speech. He simply spoke the truth as he saw it. I've been in this galaxy for 3 days. In that time, I've seen enough to understand your fundamental problem. You've built a system that prioritizes political power over people's welfare, that treats beings as commodities, that maintains order through oppression disguised as governance. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, some outraged, some intrigued. Superman continued. Your clone army, children bred for war, accelerated aging, programmed loyalty. It's slavery by another name. You've simply made the slaves look like adults and convinced yourselves it's different. Outrage erupted from several pods. A senator from Camino stood. Those clones are property, legally purchased. This outsider has no right to question our commerce laws. Superman's eyes glowed. The senator sat down quickly. Commerce laws. You're defending slavery as a commercial transaction. That tells me everything about this republic's moral foundation. He looked directly at Palpatine. And your chancellor knows, has known from the beginning. The clone army was created in secret, ordered by someone using Jedi credentials. Never investigated, never questioned, just conveniently available when war began. Doesn't that strike anyone as suspicious? The Senate erupted into chaos. Senators shouting, pods floating out of formation. Palpatine raised his hands for calm. Please, let our guest finish. His voice carried hurt and dignity. The performance was masterful. Superman wasn't fooled. The separatists have legitimate grievances. Your republic has become corrupt, bloated, inefficient. Corporate interests have more power than citizens. And instead of addressing these problems, you started a war, sent millions to die, all to maintain the status quo. A separatist sympathizer senator stood. Finally, someone who sees the truth. The Republic must be dissolved. Superman shook his head. No, the separatists are just as bad. You're being led by a former Jedi who serves the Sith. Your movement is backed by corporations seeking profit. You're not fighting for freedom. You're fighting to replace one corrupt system with another. Both sides of the chamber fell silent. Everyone accused, everyone implicated. Superman's voice carried across the sudden quiet. You need a complete restructuring, not through war, through reform. Eliminate the clone army. Replace it with voluntary forces who choose to serve. Investigate the origins of this conflict. Hold accountable everyone who profited from suffering. Implement real oversight. Give power back to the beings you're supposed to serve. He paused. Or I'll do it for you. The threat was clear. The chamber erupted again, this time with fear, with outrage, with desperate attempts to regain control of the narrative. Palpatine stood, his elderly form somehow commanding despite its frailty. Order, order, please. When silence finally returned, he spoke carefully. Kal-El raises troubling questions, questions that deserve investigation. However, in the middle of a war, such radical reforms could be disastrous. Perhaps after peace is achieved. Peace will never be achieved, Superman interrupted. Not while both sides profit from continued conflict. Not while the real power remains in shadows. He looked directly at Palpatine again. Something in his gaze made the Chancellor's mask slip, just for an instant, long enough for Superman's enhanced vision to catch the darkness lurking behind benevolent eyes. "You know exactly what I mean, don't you, Chancellor?" The Senate session dissolved into chaos. Security forces moved to restore order. Senators retreated to their pods, shouting accusations at each other. Palpatine called for recess, his voice barely audible over the din. Superman rose through the Senate chamber and exited through the open dome. Behind him, he left political catastrophe, exactly as intended. Sometimes the only way to heal a wound was to expose it, to tear away the bandages and force people to see the infection beneath. The Jedi were waiting when Superman returned to the temple. Master Windu's expression was thunderous. "You just destabilized the entire Republic. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Superman met his anger without flinching. "I've told the truth. If truth destabilizes your government, then your government deserves destabilization." Anakin stepped forward. "He's right, Master. Everything he said, we've known it. We've just been too afraid to admit it." Obi-Wan placed a hand on his former apprentice's shoulder. "Knowing something and acting on it are different. Superman has just painted a target on his back. Both factions will see him as an enemy now." Superman shrugged. "I've had worse enemies. At least here the battle lines are clear." He looked at the assembled Jedi. "The question is, will you stand with me, help me push for real change, or will you keep serving a system you know is broken?" The Jedi Council chamber had never been so tense. Masters argued, voices raised in ways centuries of training usually prevented. Finally, Yoda's voice cut through. "Enough! A decision we must make. Trust Kal-El. No, too dangerous. Oppose him, perhaps impossible. Work with him, that we might attempt." The ancient master looked at each council member in turn. "But cost there will be, cost for everyone," and so an alliance was formed, fragile, based on necessity rather than trust. The Jedi would help Superman push for reform, but they would also watch him, would be ready to act if he crossed the line from reformer to tyrant. It was a compromise none of them liked, but in a galaxy at war, with a being of godlike power demanding change, it was the best option available. Superman accepted their conditions, knowing he would break them if necessary, knowing that ultimately he would do what needed to be done regardless of their approval. The following weeks were transformative. Superman and select Jedi teams began investigating the clone army's origins, following the trail back through shell corporations and hidden transactions. What they found was damning. Count Dooku had ordered the army, but the funding came from sources connected to Palpatine's office. The timeline suggested the war had been planned years in advance, orchestrated by someone playing both sides. The Jedi brought this evidence to the Chancellor. Palpatine received them in his office. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine's expression showed appropriate concern as Mace Windu laid out their findings. "These are serious allegations, Master Windu. If true, it suggests corruption at the highest levels." The Chancellor studied the datapads. "We must investigate thoroughly. I'll appoint a special commission, independent oversight." His words were perfect, his demeanor appropriate. But Superman, standing in the corner, heard the lie, heard the quickening heartbeat, saw the micro-expressions of calculation. After the Jedi left, Superman remained. Palpatine looked up with mild surprise. "Kal-El, is there something else?" Superman stepped forward. "You're very good. I almost believe your performance myself." The Chancellor's expression showed confusion. "I'm not sure I understand." "Yes, you do." Superman's eyes began to glow. "I've dealt with corrupt politicians on my world, studied their patterns, their tells. You're hiding something. Something big." Palpatine's mask slipped slightly. The kindly old man's expression hardened. "You're accusing the Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Republic of what, exactly?" Superman crossed his arms. "I don't know yet, but I will find out, and when I do, your political protections won't matter." The threat was clear. Palpatine stood slowly. "You're a dangerous being, Kal-El. Powerful, convinced of your righteousness. History is full of such beings. They rarely end well." Superman leaned forward. "Neither do corrupt leaders who start wars. Remember that?" He departed, leaving Palpatine alone. The Chancellor sat back down slowly, his expression transformed, the benevolent mask falling away completely. Darth Sidious smiled with genuine pleasure. This Kal-El was more perceptive than expected, more dangerous, but also more useful, because his crusade against against corruption would inevitably lead him to the Jedi Council, would expose their compromises, their failures, and when the time came, Superman's actions would provide perfect justification for Order 66. The investigation continued. Superman and Obi-Wan traced financial records across the galaxy, visited worlds where clone production facilities operated, interviewed beings who had raised concerns only to be silenced. Their journey took them to Camino first, where the ocean world's endless storms mirrored the turbulence of their discoveries. The Kaminoans were cooperative but evasive, their long necks tilted at careful angles as they answered questions with technical precision while revealing nothing of substance. Superman walked through the cloning halls, observing thousands of embryos suspended in artificial wombs, each one identical, each one programmed from conception to serve and die. The scientific achievement was remarkable. The ethical violation was monstrous. A young clone, no more than 8 years old physically, approached with military bearing. "Sir, Commander Cody sent word you were coming. Said you saved his life on Ryloth." "Thank you, sir." The boy's face was earnest, grateful, completely unaware he had been created as a weapon. Superman knelt to the child's level. "What's your name?" The clone straightened proudly. "CT-5539, sir, but my brothers call me Sev." His eyes held the same weariness Superman had seen in Cody's gaze, the weight of a warrior forced into battles before understanding what war truly meant. "Sev," Superman said gently, "when this war ends, what do you want to do?" The question clearly confused the boy. His training had never included considering life beyond combat. I want to serve the Republic, sir. Be a good soldier like my brothers." The answer broke something in Superman. These beings weren't just created for war. They couldn't imagine anything else. Their entire identity was built around service and sacrifice. He stood slowly, his resolve hardening. This system had to end, not just reformed, completely dismantled and rebuilt. Obi-Wan watched the exchange from a distance, his own expression troubled. The Jedi Master had fought alongside clones for 3 years, had seen their bravery, their loyalty, their humanity, and now he was confronting the reality that the Order had accepted slavery because it was convenient. They departed Camino with data files and growing dread. The financial trail led to shell corporations on Argao, the banking world. There, amid towers of credit and corruption, they found transactions connecting separatist funding to Republic sources, money flowing both directions, weapons purchased by both sides from the same manufacturers. The war economy was circular, self-sustaining, designed to continue indefinitely while enriching a select few. Superman's heat vision nearly activated when he saw the profits. Trillions of credits, enough to feed entire systems, instead spent on weapons that would kill millions. A moon banker, his elongated head bobbing nervously, tried to explain. "It's all legal, I assure you. Proper contracts, legitimate business." Superman leaned forward, his shadow falling across the banker's desk. "Legal doesn't mean right. You're profiting from genocide." The moon's 3-fingered hands trembled. "We're just facilitators. We don't choose who fights whom. We simply manage the financial instruments." Obi-Wan placed a restraining hand on Superman's arm. "We need the records, not confessions." They left with encrypted data crystals, evidence of a conspiracy so vast it touched every level of galactic society, corporate boards, Senate committees, military procurement. Even certain Jedi Council members had unknowingly signed off on contracts that perpetuated the war machine. The corruption wasn't just at the top, it permeated everything. On their return journey, Obi-Wan sat in meditation while Superman piloted the cruiser. The Jedi's voice finally broke the silence. "We always told ourselves we were maintaining peace, that the war was forced upon us." Superman glanced back. "And now?" Obi-Wan opened his eyes. They held sadness that went deeper than the moment. "Now I see we became part of the machine. We told ourselves we had no choice, that refusing to fight would lead to greater suffering. But we never questioned why the war started, never investigated who truly benefited." He looked at his hands that had wielded a lightsaber in countless battles. "We became warriors when we should have remained peacekeepers. And in doing so, we betrayed everything the Order claimed to stand for. The admission carried weight. Superman recognized it. The same realization he'd had on his own world. Too late to prevent tragedy, but early enough to change course. You can still fix it, Superman said. The Order can reform, become what it's supposed to be. Obi-Wan smiled without humor. If we survive what's coming, if this conspiracy is as deep as we think, exposing it will shake the Republic to its foundations. Some structures can't be reformed. They have to fall before something better can rise. They traveled next to Geonosis, where the war had begun. The desert world bore scars from countless battles. Droid factories lay in ruins. Clone blood still stained the red sand despite years of erosion. Superman walked the battlefield where thousands had died in the war's opening engagement. His super-hearing picked up something beneath the sand. He dug with bare hands, moving tons of soil in seconds. What emerged was a chamber, ancient, predating the factories above it. Inside, holographic projectors still functioned on emergency power. Obi-Wan activated them carefully. Images materialized. A meeting that had taken place years before the war. Count Dooku, his aristocratic features younger but already touched by darkness, and another figure, cloaked and hooded. The voice was distorted but commanding. "The pieces are in place, my apprentice. The clone army, the separatist alliance, the Jedi's complacency. When the time comes, we will reshape the galaxy." Dooku bowed. "Yes, my master. Everything proceeds according to your design." The hooded figure leaned forward slightly. "And when the Jedi discover our deception, it will be too late. They will have become the very thing they fought against. Warriors, soldiers, complicit in atrocity. Their moral authority will be destroyed, and from their ashes, my empire will rise." The recording ended. Obi-Wan stood frozen. The voice had been familiar, hints of accent he'd heard before. But where? Superman's enhanced hearing had captured nuances the recording device couldn't. He'd compared it against every voice in the Republic database, downloaded from the archives. A picture emerged of systematic manipulation, both separatists and Republic controlled by hidden forces. The war itself a facade for consolidating power. "We need to present this to the Senate," Obi-Wan said as they reviewed evidence on a Republic cruiser. "Force a full inquiry," Superman nodded. "But we need undeniable proof, something even Palpatine can't spin." His enhanced hearing picked up a transmission, encrypted, separatist frequency. He focused, using his super-hearing to isolate the signal. Count Dooku's voice. "Proceeding according to Lord Sidious's plan, the Republic investigation must be redirected. If they discover the full scope..." The transmission cut off. Superman looked at Obi-Wan. "Lord Sidious, mean anything to you?" Obi-Wan's expression went pale. "Sidious, the Sith Lord, the one we believe is manipulating both sides of the war. We've been searching for his identity for years." Superman's eyes narrowed. "Dooku reports to him, which means the Separatist leadership answers to the Sith. But if the Sith are controlling both sides, the implications hung between them." Obi-Wan completed the thought. "Then the Sith must have control within the Republic as well. Someone high up, someone with authority to influence the war." They stared at each other as realization dawned. There weren't many beings with that kind of access. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, the leader of the Republic, the man who had been granted emergency powers to fight the war, the man who kept extending those powers with each new crisis, the man who, Superman, had already suspected of hiding something. "It's Palpatine," Superman said quietly. "He's the Sith Lord. He's been manipulating everything." Obi-Wan wanted to deny it, wanted to say it was impossible, but the evidence fit too well. "We need to inform the Council immediately." They returned to Coruscant at maximum speed. The Jedi Council assembled in emergency session. Superman and Obi-Wan presented their findings. The intercepted transmission, the financial connections, the pattern of manipulation. Masters who had served for centuries sat in stunned silence as the scope of the betrayal became clear. Master Windu spoke first. "If Palpatine is indeed Darth Sidious, then we're in the greatest danger the Jedi Order has faced since the Sith Wars. He controls the Senate, commands the clone army, has emergency powers that make him nearly unstoppable through legal means." Yoda closed his eyes. "Known this, I should have. Clouded the Force has been by dark influence. Blinded we were by arrogance, by assumption that the Sith could not rise so high. Anakin stood abruptly. We have to arrest him, now, before he can escape or activate whatever plan he's been building toward. Superman nodded. I'll come with you. If he's as powerful as you think, you'll need backup. The Jedi exchanged glances. Letting Superman participate in arresting the Chancellor was risky, but they needed every advantage. Master Windu made the decision. Very well, a strike team. Myself, Kal-El, Skywalker, and Kenobi. The rest of you, prepare the temple's defenses. If this goes wrong, there will be retaliation. They moved quickly, crossing Coruscant toward the Senate building where Palpatine maintained his office. It was late evening. Most senators had departed. Perfect for confrontation without civilian casualties. The strike team entered through a private entrance, made their way to the Chancellor's suite. Mace Windu knocked. Palpatine's voice called out, "Enter." The door opened. The elderly Chancellor sat at his desk, reviewing data pads. He looked up with mild surprise. Masters, Kal-El, this is unexpected. Mace Windu stepped forward, his hand resting on his lightsaber. Chancellor Palpatine, in the name of the Galactic Senate, you're under arrest. The Jedi Council has evidence that you are Darth Sidious, Dark Lord of the Sith. Evidence that you've been manipulating both sides of the war. For a long moment, Palpatine simply stared at them. Then he smiled, not the kindly smile of a concerned leader, but something far darker. Are you threatening me, Master Jedi? Anakin's lightsaber ignited. The Senate will decide your fate. Palpatine stood slowly, his elderly frame somehow more menacing than moments before. I am the Senate. The office exploded with dark side energy. Lightning erupted from Palpatine's fingers, striking at the Jedi. They raised their lightsabers, deflecting the assault, but the power was immense. Reality itself seemed to bend around the Sith Lord. His disguise fell away, revealing yellow eyes burning with malevolent power. Superman moved faster than the Sith Lord expected, crossing the distance in microseconds. But Palpatine was ready. Dark side lightning focused on Superman. The energy struck with force that should have killed any organic being. Superman's body absorbed it, Kryptonian cells converting the energy. It hurt. The dark side carried a corrosive element that bypassed normal durability. But Superman pushed through the pain and grabbed Sidious by the throat. The Sith Lord's eyes widened in genuine surprise. No one had ever laid hands on him like this. No one possessed the speed and strength to simply grab him. Superman lifted him off the ground. It's over. Your manipulation ends now. Sidious smiled through the chokehold. Foolish alien, you think you understand power? He reached out through the Force, not at Superman, at the entire Republic, at the command codes embedded in every clone trooper's mind. Execute Order 66. Across the galaxy, millions of clone troopers received the command. Conditioning overrode personalities. Friendships became irrelevant. The biological chips in their brains activated, turning loyal soldiers into perfect killers. On Kashyyyk, Commander Gree opened fire on Master Luminara. On Megiddo, Commander Bakara ordered his troops to fire on Ki Adi Mundi. On Felucia, Isla Sakura died surrounded by clones she had trusted. The Jedi Purge had begun. In the temple, alarms screamed. Clone troopers who had served alongside Jedi for years turned their weapons on their former allies. Younglings ran in terror as soldiers advanced with cold efficiency. The temple's defenders fought back, but they were outnumbered and caught completely by surprise. Master Yoda felt it, felt thousands of lights extinguishing across the galaxy, felt the Force itself crying out in anguish. He raised his cane and deflected the blaster bolts fired by clones he had once called friends. In Palpatine's office, the Sith Lord smiled despite Superman's grip. You're too late. The Jedi Order dies tonight. My empire rises from its ashes. Superman's grip tightened. You're forgetting something. I'm not bound by your Force. Your clones can't hurt me. Your empire means nothing if you're dead. His eyes began to glow with building heat. Sidious's smile never wavered. Kill me, and the command stands. The clones will complete their mission. The Jedi will still die. Anakin stepped forward, his lightsaber humming. We can stop them if we move fast. Warn the temple, send out emergency broadcasts. Obi-Wan was already activating his comlink. Master Yoda! The clones have turned. Order 66 has been activated. Evacuate the temple. Yoda's voice came back, strained. Already happening it is. Under attack we are. Too many there are. The sounds of battle echoed through the transmission, then static. Superman looked at the Sith Lord in his grip. Every instinct screamed to use his heat vision, to burn this evil from existence. But killing Palpatine wouldn't save the Jedi being slaughtered across the galaxy, wouldn't stop the clones following programmed orders. He threw Sidious against the wall hard enough to crater the durasteel. The Sith Lord slumped, momentarily stunned. We need to get to the temple, now! The strike team ran through Senate corridors where clone troopers were already receiving new orders, where security systems were locking down to trap anyone Palpatine deemed an enemy. Superman broke through walls, creating a direct path. They emerged into Coruscant's evening sky and flew toward the temple. Smoke rose from its pyramid. Gunship strikes had damaged the upper levels. Clone troopers in distinctive armor surrounded the structure. The 501st Legion, Anakin's own troops. Superman didn't slow down. He struck the clone line like a meteor. Soldiers flew in every direction, stunned but alive. He had learned to control his strength in the weeks since arrival, could hit hard enough to disable without killing. The Jedi followed, lightsabers deflecting blaster fire, cutting through the siege. They reached the temple entrance where temple guards fought a desperate retreat, younglings and healers evacuating through secret passages, masters forming a defensive perimeter. Yoda stood at the center, his lightsaber a green blur, deflecting incoming fire while directing the evacuation. He saw Superman and the strike team arrive. Happened it has. As I feared, the Sith's revenge. Superman landed beside him, creating a crater that sent shockwaves through the clone formation. The clones are following orders. Can we reverse it? Override the command? Yoda shook his head sadly. Biological imperative it is. In their genetics, programmed. Override it we cannot. Superman's jaw tightened. Then we evacuate everyone we can and regroup. He turned to the temple structure, used his heat vision to seal blast doors, creating choke points where the clone advance slowed, creating time for Jedi to escape. Anakin fought beside his former troops, his expression anguished. These were men he had led through dozens of battles, men he had trusted with his life. Now they were trying to kill him. He couldn't bring himself to strike back with lethal force. Obi-Wan noticed his hesitation. Anakin, they're not your men anymore. They're weapons executing a program. The words were harsh but necessary. Anakin's face hardened. He focused on disabling rather than killing, cutting weapons, targeting power packs, creating chaos in the clone formation. Superman moved through the battlefield like a force of nature. Where he passed, clone troopers fell, not dead but unconscious, weapons destroyed, unable to continue the assault. In his Senate office, Darth Sidious recovered from Superman's attack. His body ached, ribs cracked, but he was alive, and more importantly, his plan was working. Even with Superman's interference, the Jedi Order was falling. He activated his comlink. Lord Vader, report. On the other end, there was only silence, because Anakin Skywalker had not fallen, had not been turned by his manipulation. The rage that should have driven him to the dark side was instead directed at Sidious himself. The Sith Lord's smile faded. This was a problem. Without Vader, without Anakin's power added to his own, the plan was incomplete. He reached out through the Force, feeling the battle at the temple, feeling Superman's impossible presence disrupting everything, and he made a decision. If he couldn't have the Jedi's chosen one, he would eliminate him, along with Superman and anyone else who threatened his new empire. He began to chant, words in ancient Sith language, dark side energy gathering around him. At the temple, Superman felt it, a build-up of power that even his non-force-sensitive awareness could detect. Something massive was coming. Everyone into the lower levels, now! He shouted. The Jedi didn't question. They moved, shepherding younglings and wounded deeper into the temple structure. Superman turned toward the Senate building. His vision pierced through kilometers of cityscape, saw Palpatine wreathed in dark side energy, saw the technique he was preparing, a force storm, the same technique that could devastate planets. Superman launched himself toward the Senate building faster than sound, faster than light. The sonic boom shattered windows across a dozen districts. He reached Palpatine's office as the force storm manifested, a tear in space, a wound in reality, lightning and chaos and raw destructive potential. Superman flew directly into it. The energy tore at him, the dark side corrosive and alien. But he pushed forward, reached the center where Palpatine stood, channeling everything. "You can't stop this!" Sidious screamed over the storm's roar. "I'll tear this city apart! Destroy the temple! Kill every Jedi!" Superman grabbed him again. This time he didn't hold back. His grip was iron, unbreakable. "You've already lost. Your order failed. The Jedi survived, and your empire dies tonight." He flew straight up, through the storm, through Coruscant's atmosphere, into orbit. The Force storm followed, Palpatine's connection to it unbreakable. They broke Atmo and continued into space. The storm expanded, a wound in reality following them, threatening to consume everything. Superman altered trajectory, flew toward Coruscant's sun, toward the yellow star that powered his cells. Palpatine realized his intention too late. "No! You can't. You'll kill us both." Superman's expression was grim. "I've died before. It never sticks. But let's find out if Sith Lords can survive a star." They plunged toward the sun. The heat was incredible. Even for Superman, his skin began to burn, to char. But his cells also absorbed energy, filled with more power than he had possessed since arriving in this galaxy. Palpatine screamed, his dark side connection faltering as solar radiation overwhelmed it. The Force storm collapsed, reality healing, but the damage had been done. Superman released the Sith Lord and used his freeze breath, creating a cocoon of super-dense ice around Palpatine's burning form. The ice prison plummeted back toward Coruscant. Superman followed, his body healing from solar radiation. By the time he reached the planet, his burns had faded. He was stronger than ever. The ice prison struck near the Senate building. The impact crater was massive, but the ice held. Palpatine was alive, trapped, frozen in a state between life and death. Unable to act, unable to manipulate, Superman landed beside the prison and transmitted across all frequencies. "This is Kal-El, Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord, who has been manipulating both sides of the war, is contained. The clone order is hereby revoked. All clone commanders stand down immediately." But the clones couldn't stand down. The biological imperative continued. Superman had to physically disable millions of soldiers across the galaxy. He moved faster than he ever had, jumping between worlds, disabling clone forces wherever Jedi were threatened. It took hours, exhausting even his enhanced endurance. But eventually, the last clone unit was neutralized. The last Jedi survivor secured. The Order 66 command ended not through protocol, but through one being's impossible intervention. The aftermath was chaos. The Republic government, revealed as compromised from the highest level, collapsed. The Senate dissolved in recriminations and emergency elections. Buildings that had stood for millennia as symbols of democracy were evacuated as investigations began. Every senator faced scrutiny, every vote re-examined, every decision analyzed for signs of manipulation. Some were innocent, some had been unknowing pawns, others had been complicit, taking bribes or favors from Palpatine's network. Trials would take years. The Separatist Alliance, learning their leader had been a Sith pawn, negotiated peace within weeks. The shock of discovering Count Dooku had been serving a hidden master, rather than fighting for genuine independence, shattered their unity. Systems that had left the Republic seeking autonomy now found themselves questioning everything. Delegates arrived on neutral worlds, sitting across from Republic representatives they had fought for years. The negotiations were tense, bitter, but genuine. For the first time, both sides spoke without manipulation from above. Superman attended several sessions as an observer. His presence alone kept discourse civil. No one wanted to provoke the being who had disabled entire fleets and fought a Sith Lord to a standstill. But more than fear, his participation brought perspective. He would listen to grievances from both sides, then ask simple questions that cut through political rhetoric. Will this proposal help people? Does it address the underlying issue, or are you just repositioning power? The questions were uncomfortable, necessary, and slowly, painfully, progress emerged. The Jedi Order, decimated but surviving, retreated to rebuild. The temple had been heavily damaged during Order 66. Entire wings collapsed, archives burned, training grounds scarred by blaster fire. Master Yoda walked through the ruins with Superman, both surveying the destruction. Centuries of knowledge lost, generations of wisdom destroyed. The ancient master's voice held grief, but also acceptance. But perhaps needed, this was. Too attached to tradition we became, too certain of our rightness. Superman knelt beside a fallen statue of an ancient Jedi master. The stone face was serene despite being split in half. On my world, I destroyed a lot, trying to build something better. I thought I was being decisive, practical. Really, I was just afraid. Afraid that if I didn't control everything, people would make the wrong choices. He looked at Yoda. Your order made mistakes, but you admitted them. That's more than I did until it was too late. Yoda's ears lifted slightly. Learn from failure. We must rebuild differently, not as warriors, not as generals, as servants, as teachers, as examples of what the Force can help beings become. He tapped his cane against broken stone. And remember, we must, that power serves, not rules, not commands, serves. The philosophy was simple but revolutionary for an order that had become enmeshed in galactic politics for generations. The clone army was disbanded, but that created new challenges. Millions of soldiers, bred for combat, suddenly had no purpose, no direction. Some adapted quickly, finding work in security or law enforcement. Others struggled. Their accelerated aging meant they had years, not decades, to build new lives. Superman worked with Jedi healers and Republic organizers to establish transition programs, job training, education, therapy for those traumatized by battles they never chose to fight. He visited a settlement on Naboo where former clones were learning agriculture. The Green Plains reminded Superman of Kansas, of Earth, of home. Commander Cody was there, his armor replaced with simple civilian clothes. The clone looked older than his true age, worn, but also hopeful. Never thought I'd see the day, Cody said, gesturing at fields of grain. We were made to destroy. Turns out, we can create instead. He picked up a handful of soil, let it run through his fingers. This is strange. Good strange, but strange. Superman worked alongside him, using super speed to plow fields faster than any machine. The work was meditative, grounding, similar to his childhood chores on the Kent farm. You deserve this, he told Cody. All of you, a chance to choose, to live beyond what you were designed for. The clone commander nodded slowly. Some of my brothers are struggling. They don't know how to exist without orders, without missions. He looked at Superman directly. What do you tell someone whose entire purpose has been taken away? It was a question Superman had asked himself many times. You tell them that purpose isn't given, it's found or built, that being designed for one thing doesn't mean you're limited to it. He stood, dusting soil from his hands. You were created to fight, but you chose to be more than weapons. That choice defines you more than any genetic programming. Cody considered this, then smiled slightly. You sound like a Jedi, Superman laughed. The sound was surprising, genuine. Maybe they're rubbing off on me. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Clone medics became healers in civilian hospitals. Clone engineers built infrastructure instead of weapons. Clone pilots transported goods instead of bombs. The transition wasn't perfect. Crime organizations recruited some. Others formed mercenary companies. But the majority found peaceful paths. And with each passing month, the galaxy learned that beings created as tools could become people. That design didn't equal destiny. Superman spent months helping coordinate the reconstruction, flying between worlds, using his abilities to repair infrastructure, prevent disasters, provide emergency aid. On Ryloth, he helped rebuild cities destroyed by orbital bombardment. On Christophsis, he cleared wreckage from the Crystal City's streets. On Mandalore, he mediated between clans divided by the war. Everywhere he went, beings saw him differently than they had at first, no longer as a threat, as something else, a symbol perhaps, of what power could be when used in service rather than dominion. But he knew it couldn't last, knew that his continued presence would create dependency, would prevent the galaxy from learning to solve its own problems. He discussed this with Anakin one evening in the rebuilt temple meditation gardens. The young Jedi Master had matured significantly since the war's end. The darkness that had threatened to consume him had been acknowledged, confronted, worked through. "You're leaving," Anakin said without preamble. It wasn't a question. Superman nodded. "Eventually, this galaxy needs to find its own way. If I stay, I become another crutch, another being people look to for solutions instead of finding them internally." Anakin pulled at grass near where he sat. "I understand, but it's going to be hard. You've become part of the foundation, part of how we think about power and responsibility." He looked up. "You showed us that strength doesn't have to corrupt, that power can choose restraint. I also showed you the cost of certainty," Superman countered, "of believing you have all the answers, of acting without full understanding." He gestured at the stars visible through the garden's transparent dome. "Your galaxy survived me, Anakin, but barely. I disrupted patterns that had existed for millennia, changed the course of events in ways I still don't fully comprehend. Some of those changes will be good, others—" He trailed off. Anakin stood, brushing off his robes. "Others will create new problems, new challenges. That's life. That's growth." He placed a hand on Superman's shoulder. The gesture was familiar now, friendly. "You taught me something important, that recognizing your mistakes doesn't make you weak. It makes you capable of change. I was so close to falling, so close to becoming something monstrous. You helped prevent that, not by stopping me, but by showing me what happens when good intentions meet unlimited power." The conversation stayed with Superman as days became weeks, as Reconstruction continued, as the new republic took shape, democratic, decentralized, with oversight systems and checks on executive power that would make another Palpatine impossible. At least that was the hope. Superman knew that no system was perfect, that every safeguard could eventually be circumvented, but he also knew that beings had to be allowed to make their own mistakes, to learn their own lessons, even if the cost was high, and stood in the ruins, wondering if he had truly helped or simply replaced one disaster with another. Master Yoda found him in the temple ruins. The ancient Jedi looked older than his 900 years. "Saved us, you did, but at cost. Republic, fallen. Government, unstable. War, ended but peace uncertain." Superman nodded. "I know. I disrupted the natural order, interfered with events that should have played out differently." Yoda shook his head. "Natural order? No such thing there is. Only choices, consequences. You chose to act, for better or worse." The galaxy entered a period of transformation. New governments formed. The clone army was disbanded. Survivors integrated into society or left to find their own paths. Count Dooku, revealed as a Sith apprentice, faced trial for war crimes. The corporate entities that had funded the war were dismantled, and throughout it all, Superman worked tirelessly, using his abilities to rebuild what the war had destroyed, to establish systems that prevented such manipulation from happening again. But he knew it wasn't enough, would never be enough. The galaxy was too vast, too complex, too full of beings making choices he couldn't control. Eventually, he would need to step back, to let them chart their own course. The question was when, and whether he could trust them not to fall back into old patterns. Obi-Wan found him one evening standing atop the rebuilt temple. "You're thinking about leaving." Superman didn't deny it. "I can't stay here forever. This isn't my galaxy. My world still exists somewhere. I should try to find a way back." Obi-Wan nodded. "The Force shows us glimpses sometimes, of paths not taken, choices that lead to different outcomes. I've seen one where you never arrived, where Order 66 succeeded, where the Jedi were destroyed and darkness ruled." He paused. "Whatever else you've done, you prevented that. You gave us a chance to survive, to rebuild, to learn." Superman looked at the stars, at the vast galaxy spread before him. "I learned something here too. That absolute power isn't the answer. That forcing change, even with good intentions, creates as many problems as it solves, that sometimes the best thing you can do is give people the tools and step back. He glanced at Obi-Wan. I think that's what I'll do. Help establish the foundations, then leave before I become another Palpatine, another tyrant convinced of his righteousness. The next year was spent in transition. Superman worked with the new galactic government to establish oversight systems, to create checks and balances that would prevent another Sidious, to train new defenders who could protect the galaxy without armies or absolute authority. The Jedi Order, reformed and humble, took up this role, not as generals, not as political leaders, but as guardians, mediators, servants of the Force, and the people. Anakin, having narrowly avoided the fall to darkness, took vows of service, committed himself to teaching the next generation, to ensuring they learned from the mistakes of the past. He and Superman developed an unlikely friendship, one forged in shared idealism and shared recognition of how close they had both come to becoming villains. "You saved me," Anakin said one day. "Saved all of us. How can we repay that?" Superman shook his head. "Live well. Build something better. Don't let my intervention become a crutch. The galaxy has to save itself. I can only provide opportunities." He looked at the young Jedi. "You especially. You have so much potential, so much power. Use it wisely. Never let anger make your choices." Anakin nodded seriously. "I won't, I promise." And he meant it. The path to Vader had been blocked, a new destiny unfolding. 2 years after his arrival, Superman stood once more in the Senate chamber, but this time addressing a very different government, smaller, more accountable, representative of beings across the galaxy who had chosen their leaders carefully. "I came here by accident," he said. "Fell into your galaxy without understanding it, and I almost repeated the mistakes of my own world. Almost became the tyrant I swore to fight." He looked across the assembled leaders. "But I learned. You taught me that change cannot be imposed, that peace cannot be forced, that every being deserves the right to choose their own path, even if those choices lead to conflict, even if freedom is messy and complicated." He paused. "I'm leaving now, returning to search for my home. But I want you to know that this galaxy gave me something I had lost. Hope, the belief that maybe, just maybe, people can learn, can grow, can choose better." The Senate erupted in applause, not for Superman's power, not for his victories, but for his choice to step back, to trust them, to recognize that ultimately the galaxy belonged to those who lived in it, not to visiting gods, not to well-meaning dictators, but to the trillions of beings whose choices collectively determined the future. Superman rose through the Senate dome one final time, flew toward the edge of known space, toward the coordinates where his arrival had torn reality. The Jedi had studied the dimensional tear, understood its nature, and with that understanding, they had found a way to replicate it, to send Superman home. Master Yoda, Mace Windu, Obi-Wan, and Anakin stood at the prepared location, an ancient temple on a forgotten world, where the Force was strong and reality thin. "Ready you are?" Yoda asked. Superman nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be. Thank you, all of you, for not giving up on me when I was at my worst." Obi-Wan smiled. "We're Jedi. Hope is what we do." Anakin stepped forward and offered his hand. Superman shook it, the grip firm, equal. "May the Force be with you." Superman returned the sentiment, even though the Force couldn't touch him. "And with you, all of you." The Jedi began the ritual, ancient words in forgotten languages, the Force responding, reality bending, a tear opening, just like the one that had brought him here. Superman looked through the breach, saw glimpses of his own universe, his own world, the familiar blue and green of Earth. He took a step toward it, then paused, looked back. "If you ever need help, if another crisis threatens everything, send a signal. I'll find a way back." The Jedi nodded, knowing they would never call, knowing that was the point. Superman stepped through the dimensional tear, reality sealed behind him. He was gone. The Jedi stood in silence for a long moment. Then Yoda spoke. "Different, our galaxy is now. Better, perhaps, or perhaps just different, but alive, growing. That Worth protecting it is. The masters departed, returning to their duties, to the endless work of maintaining peace without armies, of serving without ruling, of being guardians instead of generals. The lessons Superman had taught them, intentionally and otherwise, would shape the Jedi Order for generations. Across the galaxy, life continued. Former soldiers found new purposes, worlds rebuilt from war damage. The Force balanced itself, light and dark flowing in natural cycles rather than manipulated extremes. And in the deepest archives of the Jedi Temple, a record was kept, a warning and a reminder. That power, even well-intentioned, must be tempered with wisdom. That change forced upon people never lasts. That the galaxy belonged to those who lived in it, not to visiting gods from distant stars. Years passed, decades. The story of Superman became legend, told and retold until truth and myth blurred together. Some said he had been a Force ghost given physical form. Others claimed he was an ancient Sith experiment gone wrong. A few, mostly Jedi who had actually met him, kept the truth alive, that he had been exactly what he claimed, a being from another universe, powerful but flawed, trying to help but sometimes causing harm, learning as he went. On Coruscant, now capital of a republic rebuilt from scratch, statues stood in memorial to the Clone Wars, to the Jedi who fell, to the clones who had been used as weapons, and in the center of the memorial, a plaque with simple words. In memory of Kal-El, visitor, savior, friend, who taught us that power without wisdom leads to tyranny. That true strength lies in knowing when to act and when to step aside. May the Force be with him wherever he may be. Anakin, now a Jedi Master himself, visited the memorial with his own students, young Padawans learning the history of their order, learning the mistakes that had nearly destroyed it, and learning the lessons that had allowed survival. "Master Skywalker," one student asked, "did you really know him, Superman?" Anakin smiled with memory. "I did, briefly. He was complicated, powerful beyond imagining, but also lost, looking for redemption." The student considered this. Did he find it? Anakin looked at the statue, at the memorial, at the galaxy that had survived because one being had chosen to act, then chosen to leave. "I think he did, in his own way. He saved us from the Sith, from ourselves, and then he let us go, trusted us to build something better. That's the hardest kind of redemption, accepting that you can't control everything, that sometimes the best help is no help at all." In another universe, Superman landed on Earth, his Earth. The dimensional journey had been instantaneous from his perspective, but time flowed differently between realities. On his world, only minutes had passed since his banishment. The heroes who had cast him out were still assembled, still recovering from the battle. They looked up as he descended from the sky, weapons raised, ready for another fight. But Superman raised his hands. "I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to impose my will. I just wanted to say, you were right. I had become what I swore to fight, and it took being exiled to understand that." He looked at Batman, at Wonder Woman, at all the heroes he had once called friends. "I learned something. That power doesn't give you the right to rule, that even good intentions can lead to terrible outcomes. That trust is more important than control." Batman's expression was unreadable behind his cowl. "What are you saying?" Superman smiled, a genuine expression, the first in years. "I'm saying you won. You were right to stop me, and I'm not going to fight you anymore. I'm leaving, going somewhere quiet, somewhere I can't hurt anyone else." He rose back into the sky. "If you ever need me, really need me, for something that threatens everything, call, I'll come, but on your terms, not mine." He flew away, toward the stars, toward a small farm in Kansas where he had once been just Clark Kent, where he could be human again, or try to be. Behind him, the heroes watched in stunned silence. It was Flash who finally spoke. "Did he just learn? Grow? Change?" Wonder Woman nodded slowly. "It would seem so. Whatever happened during his banishment, it transformed him." Batman's jaw was tight. "Or it's a trick, another manipulation." Superman heard them even at this distance, heard the suspicion, the doubt. He couldn't blame them. Trust, once broken, took years to rebuild, maybe decades, maybe forever, but he had time. For the first time in years, he had nothing but time. Time to think, to reflect, to become someone worthy of the symbol on his chest. Not Superman the tyrant, but Superman the symbol of hope, even if that hope was only for himself. In the Kansas farmhouse, he sat on the porch, watching the sun set over fields of wheat, thinking about both galaxies, both chances at redemption, both lessons learned at terrible cost. He had failed his world by trying to control it, had almost failed another galaxy by making the same mistake, but in the end, he had learned, had grown, had chosen differently. That, he realized, was what separated heroes from villains. Not power, not intentions, but the willingness to admit mistakes, to change course, to choose better. The stars burn silently, just as they always had, in this galaxy and others, connecting universes and possibilities, and somewhere between stars, in the space where reality was thin and dimensions touched, the Force whispered, acknowledging a being who had touched its realm without being touched in return, who had changed destiny without being bound by it, who had left scars and hope in equal measure. The galaxy breathed once more, different but alive, changed but free. On Coruscant, Yoda meditated in the restored temple, felt the Force flowing through the galaxy, felt balance returning, not perfect, never perfect, but present, real. He smiled slightly. Learned, we all did, from visitor, from crisis, from choice. He opened his ancient eyes, looked at the stars through the temple's windows. Grateful I am for the chance, for the lesson, for the hope that even the lost can find their way home. And across the galaxy, in 1,000 systems, and 1,000,000 worlds, beings lived their lives, made their choices, built their futures, unaware that they had come so close to absolute destruction, so close to tyranny wearing the face of salvation. But they had survived, through luck, through the intervention of an impossible visitor, through the choices of heroes who refused to give up. The Clone Wars were over, the Sith defeated, and the future, uncertain but alive with possibility, unfolded before them. Another light waits to cross the stars. Its story rests in the playlist on the left of your screen. The next legend ready to begin. May the Force be with you, always.